So for today's sort of bonus video, I wanted to show you how tiling textures work and specifically how hand-painted tiling textures are made. Last Friday, I talked about hand painting in general. So if you didn't check that out, you can go look at that. In Blender, it's basically you're just painting the physical shape of the texture rather than using photos or other tools like Substance Designer or Nodes. But I want to show you today how we can do the same thing and actually create tiling textures right inside of Blender. So why do we think about tiling and why are tiling textures so important? Well, UV space itself repeats. So this is an example. Again, this is the Super Smash Bros. Melee Pikachu model, and we can see this texture of his eye, but the actual geometry is off to the side. It's because this UV space actually repeats over and over again. So when we've been placing our UVs before, when we've been last week we were doing treasure chests, placing them in your texture, like where you locate them is what color they are. Well, this UV space repeats infinitely. So we could scale something up huge and it would repeat this pattern over and over again. We can use this to our advantage for things like tiling textures. So this is some examples pulled from Super Mario Galaxy, and it doesn't make sense to hand paint each individual strand of this like light wood, especially when these patterns tend to repeat. My desk is made of wood laminate, and if this little piece of my desk and that little piece of my desk were the exact same repeated texture, which I'm pretty sure they are because it's a laminate, it's hard for us to tell. It's the kind of detail we don't really notice. So we see here like this galvanized metals and these three different types of wood here, these wood boards and beams. And the way the UVs are laid out, for instance, in all these wood pieces, is our little texture UV space, and we can see how big everything's scaled up so that we get the same pattern repeating over and over again. If you look closely, you can see some of the same stuff repeating over the surface of this entire like wood panel. But again, we don't notice because it's just there to give us surface, just to give us texture. This kind of tiling thing is great for like the rocks and tree stuff that we've been modeling. It's great for any natural, like any elements where it's made out of just the same repeating material. So let's take a look at how we would actually go about that. Course 2, we can think about tiling in just one direction. So this little spike, all of these spikes are just lined all the way along, and because this little color goes dark to light from here to here, we repeat it all the way across. I want to show you here though what some of these tiling textures look like. I highly recommend you check out Peter Burrow's channel. He goes by the handle Kyrosmith, but really if you actually check out like hand painting textures, he's one of the first things that comes up on YouTube. He is a good friend of mine, former student at MSU alum, and he's a great concept artist who decided to do a series of tutorials on how to do hand-painted textures. These are all samples of his from his ArtStation profile. And if you want to get deeper into this kind of thing, I really recommend checking out. He uses Photoshop for his main painting tool, but the techniques he uses would definitely work in any of these areas too. So I've made a simple rock in here, and I'm just going to go through, adjust the camera, and make some adjustments. And I'm just going to go through and show you how you can make textures, tiling textures right in here, and not even need to use Photoshop. So before I go to anything, not even going to worry about UV editing or anything like that. I'm just going to go to Texture Paint. And I don't actually need this window right now. I'm going to slide it over. I want to leave it there. I'm going to come back to it, but I mostly want to focus on this. Because what I want to hit is new. I'm creating a new texture, so I'm going to name this maybe rock. It's going to be my rock texture. And 1024 by 1024 is probably fine. All this other stuff is pretty good. So what I have in here now is a scene, and I can actually paint in all of my texturing stuff. Now, as I do this, I'm trying to get this side to line up with that side. It's a little hard to do without being able to see everything. So if I come over to this little panel over here and look at view, I can actually turn on repeat image. And I can see going from here to here where things are going to repeat. Now, as you can see, it's getting a little hard to get this pattern to repeat nice and cleanly. But we can kind of go one step further with this. So undo all those. And under my tool, I can come down into tiling, and I can turn on X and Y. What this means is now, when I paint, it's actually going to overlap a little bit. So as I kind of zoom out, when I paint, it's going to make it really easy for me to make this whole thing a tiling pattern that I can place on my object. So to kind of clarify this, and it's easy to get lost, like you think you're painting over there and nothing happens. I'm going to go back to view. I know tiling's turned on, and I'm going to turn off repeat image. I'm just working on this one spot. So we could treat this a lot like we would just treat any other painting program. I'm going to choose like a dark kind of gray color and to fill in with. So I'm going to start with something like that. And let's just make a simple repeating pattern right now. So I can go to my brush and just try to like darken it up and make a couple spots here and there. And that would certainly go on my texture. In fact, let's go ahead and throw it on my material. So on my rock here, give it a new material. I'm going to give it base color and go image texture. And I'm going to choose the texture that I'm working with. So if I take a look at this, and when I'm texture painting, I find it's helpful to turn on color mode, like see it as I'm working with it. But as I'm painting on it, I'm sort of painting on the surface of the object. It has some kind of default UVs just to give me an idea of what the material is looking like. But again, I'm making little dots all over it. Kind of takes a long time. So here's what I'm going to do. Kind of make the patterning of this look a lot better. So I undid all of the material stuff here. Go ahead, do base color, texture. So let's see. Again, going pretty small on this. So now what I can do is instead I'm going to go to my brush menu. So I have like the stroke menu down here, and it's set to space, which is like the default kind of brush. But I can set it to dots. And dots, you see, kind of like scatter some dots over there. But if we turn jitter way up, it creates like this nice scatter brush. So I can go F, and I'm going to go really large, and Shift F, and I'm going to drop its strength down a lot. And so you can see what's happening is I'm brushing a really subtle colors across with it. And it's kind of giving me that like mottled color look. That's too strong. I'm looking for something a lot subtler than that. So really I want to kind of go like very in the middle kind of colors. I just want to create like a subtle variation of everything. If you have like favorite grunge brushes that you ever use in Photoshop, you can actually dump them right into texture here too, which is pretty cool. That's a little beyond the scope of what I'm doing now. Now I'm going to go a little darker, my radius a little smaller, my strength a little higher. Do the same thing, but a little lighter this time. Maybe not that much, maybe a little. And so as I'm going, I'm creating like a nice little pattern. Go here, and I'm going to set this to flat. And that kind of gives me like what the flat texture looks like. Now you see I'm going to have seams right now, but we're going to work with that. So now I'm going to go even smaller on my radius, and then just keep going smaller, strength higher, and more intense. And I'm doing all this in black and white right now, but you can definitely do colors with this. I'm just choosing to do it this way, because that's way too strong. Anything that looks like polka dots, I want to kind of avoid. That, and let's go even smaller. And I'm just going to go real small right now. I'm going to skip it. So it's kind of giving me this cool little pattern. Go dark with it. Same kind of deal, just brushing across. Keeping pretty light with my pen. Then I can go real tiny. And I'm holding shift to like make this drag go just a little bit. Sick. This is just giving me like kind of get some real subtle. Now you see the dots are pretty big on here, but I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that. You want to avoid getting too bright because that's like really cozy. So this is going to be a nice tiling feeding pattern that goes across my whole surface. So when I want to get this like really looking nice now, again, we're doing a simple rock now. I want to take this whole rock. This is its UVs. A little messy. It's not the biggest deal in the world. What I want to do is hit 2, and I kind of want to cut across. That's going to be hard to cut that way. Maybe I'll go across. Just trying to get, there we go. And then Control E and mark seam, and then A, U, and unwrap. It's going to give me the unwraps in here. Here's what I want to do. If I take it and I'm looking at my tiling here, I can take these two shells and I'm just going to scale them way up. And we can see that this pattern is repeating on here so that it's actually giving me like a nice tiling, and it's got a nice lot of detail in it, even though it's not a very big map, because I can repeat this as many spaces as I want. So this is kind of the secret to getting, like, especially that repeating stuff. So I get a tons of variations of rocks, and I can use this all over the place. And it's still pretty hard to see the seams because it's repeating so much. Good shade smooth in it, and it's gonna maybe find a spot. Like we see, that's a pretty cool like rock effect. Now, how can we take this a little bit farther? Well, I'm going to show you how I would do like a hand-painted tiling texture for like a cobblestone round or something like that. And maybe we'll even use that next week. So I'm going to take this, and I don't really need this rock for what we're doing. And I'm just going to close out because I don't want to look at this right now. I'm going to say new. And this one's going to be like rock floor. I'm doing these at 1024. That's actually a little high for hand-painted textures. We could definitely reduce that. And it's actually easier to paint in there. I'm going to take this one down. Maybe even go like, I want to see how low I can get away with. Like do like a stylized, almost like N64 Sega Dreamcast kind of era. So I'm going to go down to 128 by 128, which is frankly not a lot. Hit N to open my panel up. I need to go back into my tools here. Right now I'm in UV, so I need to be in texture paint, and I need to get that rock floor that I was looking for. Now let's create a face, and I want to choose a dark color. I like starting with the grout, like the spot in between the rock. It's usually very dark, so almost black but not quite. And then I want to choose just a color above it. Use my brush, make sure I'm set to tiling X and Y, so it'll go across. Reset this to space. I'm going to turn that jitter down. So now I have just this, and I can take my strength up. 100 is a lot. It's not bad to start with, but I often start a little lower than that. So F, I'm gonna get the size down a little bit, and you know, I have a lot of different settings in here in terms of like how my brush will like look. I can adjust the fall off here. This is right now like I have a very flat brush. If I do this here, the fall off isn't as soft as the standard kind of like that. So all these fall offs kind of do different things. I like the effect I'm getting with this one though. If I go strength 100, it's just gonna really pop those right away. Layer color, something like that, and then F. What I'm gonna do now, just draw out some round kind of rock. And see, like I like the way it kind of overlaps, like it's not perfect. And I want to get some rocks that come, you know, overlapping from side to side. You know, don't have to all be the same size. I can have a couple slightly smaller ones. But if I go overboard with like a really weirdly shaped one, it's going to be really obvious that it repeats. And something you can do that I like to do is go to View. I can turn Repeat Image on and off. If I right-click this, I can go Assign to Quick Favorites, which means anytime I want, I can just hit Q and bring that up. Brings that menu up. So, gonna go in. Paint this. Cool. We get this kind of rock in here. Again, I'm trying to get these really, really cobblestone-y, really, really round. I don't want to get too weird with my shapes, like I said. Don't want to make it too obvious. I want a good couple patterns. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, like, there's a couple spots that are a little empty or a little blank, so I can always kind of pop back in here and see if I can get away with extending this one up a little bit, that one there. Not sure where my original, there's my original kind of pattern. Because I want to get the idea that these are relatively well fit together over the years. Okay, so like I got this, and if I threw this on a big pattern, so let's go ahead and hide this guy, and I'm gonna put in a big plane, scale that up, and this can be my sample here. So new and color, image texture, and I want to use that rock for. And yeah, right now it's just not tiling, but like because it's just one setup. I will preview on a few for free. But I can always come into UV editing and just AS2, which will just double it. So now whatever I do, it's going to double the pattern, and it's like going to show me what it would look like on a wall. So I got a pretty extreme difference between these two, and I actually think that's way, way too much. Q, display repeated. So I'm going to tone it down by hitting this up. I'm going to do strength of about 50. Usually this is like a fill-in tool, but if I set its fill threshold really high, it's going to fill everything. And so I can kind of choose like a 50% gray, and it just tones it down for us. So we don't want something that extreme, black and white. So this is actually pretty cool. So then I can take this and say this is going to kind of be my, I like this. Go a little darker. Yeah, something like that. So now I can come in and pick out highlights and lowlights just by brushing up a little here. Thinking about the shape of these rocks, that's too strong. Down a bit. Again, subtlety is really the key to getting these to look good. So now I can just kind of pick out shapes. If you've ever done pixel art, it's very much like that. In fact, you just set your texture of resolution low enough, you can definitely pixel art it here. When I'm blending to, I like to set my strength, maybe set it right around 0.4, because anytime we hit S, we can resample it, and it will sample whatever's under our brush, and it just helps us blend colors. So pick that. I'm going to hit my strength up to about 80 to knock in my initial. And I'm just going to go around and pick out highlight. I'm imagining my source of light coming from a single direction. So when you're working with something like a hand painted, you're painting in the light. F, size. F's a really good hotkey to remember for this. Just changes the size of our brush. Just going around that. I definitely want to hit up this side first when it comes to highlight. And just take a look at how this looks. Yeah, that's pretty good. Doesn't look like I really missed any. Now I could go a little bit darker. Maybe right about there, and I'm going to go like a little bit darker. Like I'm trying to paint in a little shadow. Let's go really small with this. I'm just going to try to paint in the shadow right when it kind of comes into the graph here. The brush pretty. Helps kind of pick out these rocks from the background. And if I have my strength, for instance, set to pressure sensitivity, like it is right now, I can just ease up on it or press really hard to get something darker or lighter. I to get like some of these shadows creeping up a little bit. Like my key shadows, picking out a couple of these rocks. Okay, and I'm gonna do F a little bit bigger, and I'm gonna strength down like 30. It's just gonna help me layer on. So especially I find in like background stuff, anything that's supposed to be tiling, you want it to be really subtle. So you see like the lightest and darkest grays I'm using are fairly close to each other. And again, there's so many like really cool brush packs you can find online that are like designed for Photoshop. And as long as you can get an alpha out, like a you can make like a 2D black and white image. You can use it as a cutout. Maybe I'll do a video on making custom brushes inside of Blender. You can even use Blender to make it. Pretty cool if you're smart about how you do it. So we got here now a pretty nice kind of tiling texture with it. You know, I think definitely you could push some stuff a little bit further. If I wanted to get highlights, like if I wanted to key things out, I could just pick out a couple just very, very subtle, kind of real gentle with it. Because I can definitely overdo this. My like lighter highlight colors. We're kind of like just thinking about like a little spot of light, kind of just picking out the highest peak. I mean, you could do so much stuff with this. You could put moss on this. You could cover all kinds of different kind of patterns. Okay, and then I'm going to try to use my smear here to say F. You can try this out and see how this looks. It's just, if I really want to like soften up, make this a real soft kind of shape. That's going to blur things together. If I want some of these to appear like they're all relatively even, if I want some of these to appear like they're further in or closer together, like from the surface, what I do is take my brush, take it to a darker tone, F, and go real low on the strength. Just say like, let's say I want to push this into the background more with like a dark color. I still have my here, feels like pretty bright on. I could take a couple of these and they sort of fade into the background. So maybe I'm going to make this one fade a little background. It can help us get some variation on these rocks. Maybe this won't be quite as far out. Every now and again now, it's like, see, it gives us more interesting variation on everything. So I can also paint in here too, if I want to, but it'd be a little tough when I'm tiling. But this is pretty good. Of course, I've done everything in black and white. You know, feel free to use as much color as you like. But I just want to show you this is how we can actually make this now, and we can use a tiling texture on any surface we want. Next week, when we start making like buildings, walls, and things like that, you could use this if you wanted, instead of doing a low poly style, to do more like a World of Warcraft style or something like that. So definitely check out. There's tons of great resources on it. Just want to show you some basic techniques. And I'll see you in the next one.